Hi, so welcome back to my train room. A couple of weeks ago, maybe a little less than a couple of weeks ago, I posted a video from the same space. At the time, it was an empty space. I hadn't built anything in here yet. And then a few days ago, I posted a video of me building this Helix. Have a look at those two videos when you get a chance. Once you watch this one, or stop, watch those, come back to this, whatever you want. Anyway, today I thought I would just show a little bit more of what I've done with the rest of the room. And in my first video, I showed you my track plan of what I wanted to do, a double-decker layout like this that you can see I've made some progress on. Um, and I kind of wanted to show you today how that's actually going to start taking shape in real life. I just thought I'd start this video at this end because this is where I kind of ended off last week's video. But for now, let's move down to the other end of the room, and I'll show you kind of where the trains will start in my imaginary south to north rail line, starting with the rail yard and moving up to the north end of the line, and how that's going to look in the room. So let's go over there right now. At the other end of the room, it's my basement window up there. The curtains are from when it was my daughter's bedroom. So the whole railroad, the way I envision it, is the south end of it will start on this lower deck here, and this kind of disappears into a closet here. It's 2 feet deep, but there's bench work all the way into the closet now. So the idea is that this lower section here will be my rail yard. I currently have a bunch of trains just parked in here because I was working over there and I didn't want to drop anything on them, so that's where they are. The entire layout will also have lighting up here, these kind of strip lights. Let's see what happens when I turn this on. Yeah, it gets kind of bright, but that's okay. The entire layout will have lighting with a valance all the way around to light up the upper deck. And additionally, I will be taking these strip LED lights and mounting them on the bottom of the upper deck to light up the lower deck. So everything will be brightly lit. That's the idea anyway. We'll see how it all works out. So the rail layout's going to start with a rail yard here that then curves around the corner, and my vision anyway is to build a small steel mill scene back in here, and all of the bench work along this section and up to over there is all just flat 1/2-inch plywood right on top, and then I will put cork before I lay the track. So that'll be for the rail yard and the industrial stuff here. So I'm thinking of putting a steel mill here and maybe a paper mill scene here. Both of them are ideas of the major industries that the ACR served when I used to ride the train with my dad when I was a kid. And from there, it will continue along from this industrial area on that way down the track. Let's switch to the other end again so I can show you that. Okay, so now we're back at this end of the room, and the trains will continue along from this industrial area. And through this area right in here, I'm going to make a small town or a city scene. There'll be a train station, some kind of a downtown area, maybe some restaurants, things like that. I have a few things in mind. And then the trains will enter along that rear track back there, go through the Helix, and then they will go up here to get to the upper deck, and then continue across this duck under across my desk. There's a desk there currently, but that desk that's just a little workstation. I'm going to have a proper desk with my computer and everything set up right there. And then they will continue along back up to the upper deck. Additionally, right here, this closer track that goes down to my 5 tracks of staging underneath this lower deck right here. And I'm kind of envisioning that will be kind of an interchange track where trains will enter the layout or leave the layout, bringing things to and from the industries that are on this lower deck along here. At least that's kind of how I'm seeing it. Okay, now we're back at this end again. And as I mentioned, the train continues across, goes across the duck under here through this hole This hole is taller than it needs to be because, as I'll mention at the end, I am going to have another level of track up here that's going to be the north end of the line staging. But for now, the train will come out of the Helix at the other end, run across this duct under. My computer workstation and desk will be here. Currently, I just have an old IKEA desk here as a workbench. But the train will continue across. It will curve around this corner. Up here, I'm thinking of making a small kind of a northern little town or village in here, and then maybe a lumber mill scene up here. And then it will continue along this upper deck. Rural scenery, Northern Ontario, trees, lakes, things like that. I don't have it all planned out for sure, but that's the idea. And it will continue along here. And then we're back at the other end of the room again. And then the trains will continue along through kind of rural scenery. Northern Ontario scenery is my idea. Potentially be a small lake scene here. So once they get over here, they will curve across and back across. There will be a track that goes across here for continuous running. I haven't finished this part of the bench work because I ran out of 1x4s. I need to go buy some more. And then there'll be the track will come along here and join across and join back onto the track that came up from the Helix. And that provides me with a continuous loop for running around the top deck. What I didn't mention earlier is when it comes off the Helix, there'll be a second split that goes up and gradually has an incline that goes up all the way around the room. And it will continue up at an upper level up here. And I'm hoping to have somewhat of like a logging scene at the back, maybe back half to third of the deck on this side, that will then continue around up higher along the walls, and there will actually be 3 or 4 tracks of staging above my duct under, above my desk. And that will be the north end of the line where the trains end going up north. The idea, again, in a nutshell, they start at the rail yard, go through some industry area here, go through a town and city here. Then as they leave the city, the idea is they disappear in the Helix, and that's the traveling up farther north, come out of the Helix, go across the duct under, enter the upper deck over there, and then we're into the more of the rural scenes, maybe a little lumber mill, things like that. And then continuing up here, and also up here, before they disappear into the staging at the top end, there's also going to be a park. I'm kind of getting my idea from the Agua Canyon Park on the Algoma Central Railway. So we'll have like tourist trains that can run from the town up here, do the whole Helix around the loop and the thing, and making their way up to the park up here. The trains can stop there. And I may even put a turnaround loop up here because I have the space. And then the trains will head back south around the whole layout, around the Helix, and back down into town. That's kind of the way I'm seeing it. We'll see how it all works out. I'll show you that in later videos. For the actual bench work, you can see that what I've done here is this black stuff is actually 3/4 inch plywood that I repurposed years ago from some old stage decking. Because I had an audiovisual business, I had some old stage decking I wasn't using anymore. Perfectly good 3/4 inch plywood that was already painted black. I just ripped it down into strips and created my old bench work for my previous layout using that. So now I've reused some sections of it. I still had 3 sections of it that were reusable. The rest of my bench work, for the most part, is just plain old rough 1x4 that I bought at Home Depot, using a brad nailer and glue, gluing it all together and then screwing it into place. I've put some 3/4 inch aluminum posts in here for extra supports for the upper deck. I know they're at the front end of the layout and maybe a little bit of a visual obstruction, but it was a simple, solid way to do it without having to create a bunch of shelf brackets and things like that. The only place that I've used a little bit more expensive wood, and it's not really expensive, it's just I used some 1x3 pine for the duck under part. It's just a little bit cleaner looking than the rough lumber because it's going to be more visible. Essentially, that's what I've been doing with building the basic bench work. Most of the bench work, as I kind of alluded to a little bit earlier in the video, is going to be an open grid like this, other than the industrial and rail yard area, which I've got the plywood on top, and I will be using cork underneath all of the track work throughout the entire layout. So that's kind of my tour of my crane room, the way it exists right now. Hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea of my around the walls idea for my train. Essentially a south to north rail line, starting with a rail yard, ending up with staging up high over here, going through an industrial urban scene through the Helix up to the upper deck being a lot more rural scenery, the kind of thing I remember going north on the Algoma Central Railway. So I'm kind of trying to incorporate the two different types of scenery that I remember it going through on the two different decks. Overall, in a nutshell, that's kind of what I'm hoping to do. I hope you guys found this informative. I will go through a little bit more in another video how I made the decisions of what I'm wanting to include in it and what I'm not wanting to include in it, and why I'm making the decisions that I'm making. I don't want to make the one video way too long, so I will do that in another video. Until next time, if you guys like what you see, remember to click the like button, subscribe, and have fun model railroading.